Hello and welcome to another episode here on Maximum Gaming Retro. I'm your host David Ellis, and today I will be going over my top 10 PC games of all time. In order to keep this video at a reasonable length, I am splitting this up into two parts. This is going to be part one. So one of my favorite PC games is Warcraft, which is one of the very first PC games I ever owned. Warcraft is a really great real-time strategy game that sort of defined what a real-time strategy game should be. Most people are familiar with World of Warcraft, the massively multiplayer online role-playing game, but very few people knew the beginnings of this franchise. Started way back on the MS-DOS, which this game pits humans along with our allies, the elves and the dwarves, against the foe, the orcs, who have come through a portal from another realm and are trying to conquer Azeroth. Now the cool thing about this game is you can play two campaigns. You can play either as the humans trying to repel the orcs and fight your way across Azeroth to defeat them at Blackrock Spire, or you can take on the role of the orcs as you conquer Azeroth. While the game mechanics seem pretty basic and there isn't too much involved in comparison to a lot of modern games, it is a very great classic. It helps you kind of understand the basics of real-time strategy games. And in my personal opinion, the graphics hold up very well. If you can get this game to run, which you have to do through a DOS box. But besides that, it's still a great game to play. Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 3 are also great, but this game is the one that started it all. Age of Empires is a real-time strategy game that takes place during the Middle Ages, and it pits civilizations of that time period up against each other. It's a great game that has a campaign, also multiplayer and single-player matches that you can constantly just play over and over again. A whole bunch of different scenarios are available, which gives you a bunch of different options when you play this game. It's really fun to build up your civilization, advance through the different ages to get better technology, and in the end just build a really big army and wipe out the other player's king. This game gives you access to a bunch of land and water combat, and you can gather resources from a bunch of different places. You can gather lumber and gold, or you can gather food from bushes. There's even animals you can harvest food from, and even fish in the water. There's a bunch of cool aspects that were added to the game, like monks, which can pick up relics that are helpful for giving your civilization different perks, as well as using monks to convert the enemy forces. At the end of the day, it's just a fun game where you can get a bunch of knights and archers and a bunch of siege weapons and go fight another civilization. Next up, I want to talk about Civilization 5. Now, the Civilization franchise has been around for a very long time, and then they just recently came out with Civilization 6. But number 5 is one of my favorites, as is a lot of people's favorites. This is a game that has quite a number of expansions and is a really great fleshed out game. Now, unlike some of the other games on my list, this game is a turn-based strategy game. So instead of being constantly active, every player gets to take their turn, which slows down the gameplay a lot, gives you time to really decide what you're going to do and how you're going to make your next move. The great thing about this game, say in comparison to Age of Empires, is Age of Empires being a real-time strategy game is pretty basic in the fact that it doesn't have a massive amount of depth like Civilization does. Civilization, because it's sort of a turn-based chess-like game, they can really take their time and make a huge, great amount of gameplay systems that really turn this game into a giant marathon gaming session. Now in Civilization, you can go all the way from the Stone Age all the way up through modern times, where one of the ways you can win the game is by launching a rocket up into space. So it just goes to show you how large of a time frame this game takes place across. Besides just your basic combat that you might be used to, having a bunch of soldiers and units that go out and just wipe out another player, there's a lot of different options when it comes to winning the game. You can win through science, such as by launching the rocket at the end of the game. You can win through diplomacy. You can have a bunch of spies that sabotage your enemies. So there's just a wide range of variety that this game kind of encompasses. So in this game, most of the units have quite a lot of different options with regards to leveling up, going through the different ages. Soldiers, you start off ancient warriors that you have towards the beginning of the game. You can really upgrade and get better at combat over time. Eventually, as you level up through the ages, you can have your soldiers go back to your city and gain the new technology that you've done research in. You can literally have a group of soldiers that start off with stone axes and sticks, eventually level up to soldiers with rifles and all kinds of different technology. Towards the end of the game, some of the gameplay really changes, because in the beginning, you have to do research just to make ships that you can cross the ocean, where later on you can have giant aircraft carriers with rockets, and you can even launch nukes against your enemies. So the gameplay really is very dynamic and can change over the course of a couple hours while you're playing this game. Overall, this game is really fun. It's a very long game. Sometimes you can go through one map, one gameplay session. It can take upwards of 10-15 hours, depending on how long it takes for you to fight against the different enemies you come across. And that's one of the great things about this game, is it's slow paced and you can just sort of sit back and strategize if you're in the mood for something like that. Again, another real-time strategy game, Dawn of War, Warhammer 40k. Just one of my favorite games to play. I could sit here for hours going through either the campaign or just setting up different skirmishes, because there's just so much fun to be had in the Warhammer universe. I love me some Space Marines, and there's nothing better than sitting down and launching your Space Marine army to go up against some Necrons and take on just massive battles. The great thing about this game is it brings in a whole bunch of different races and characters from the Warhammer franchise, and just makes this game so much better than just a basic real-time strategy game. It adds that extra sci-fi element that you might not get from some of those more fantasy-style games like Age of Empires or Civilization. There's so many cool technologies and tanks and machines and crazy enemies with giant robots and things like that. It just makes this game just a bunch of fun to play. Each race has their own strategy for playing. Space Marines are pretty basic type of soldier units, where some of the other races are awesome, like the Eldar is one of my other favorites. They have the ability to hide their cities by cloaking a lot of their buildings. They can also do a lot of teleporting. Some of the other races, like the Tau, are really good stealth gameplay style people. Overall, it's just a really fun strategy game that you can just sort of sit there and play. Overall, it's just a really solid strategy game with a Warhammer skin. Great first-person shooter that really set the precedence for graphics is Crysis. This game is really well known for being the game that you really had to build a dedicated gaming PC for, because the graphics on this game were just so great. Crysis is a solid shooter, and one of my favorite aspects of this game is really what makes this game unique is the suit that you get to wear. Long before a lot of other games were using any sort of special powers for the shooters, you really just had to rely on your character just wielding weapons. This game really takes it to the next level by adding a whole new dynamic with your different suit powers, having the ability to make super jumps, having built-in armor, having a cloaking mode. It really gives you a great playground of different options you can use. One of my favorite aspects of this game is just the ability to modify your weapon on the fly. Being able to add and detach silencers, add and detach different scopes, having either flashlight or laser. That really at the time was really groundbreaking, having the ability to not only have just one weapon, but having the ability to really modify it and change it to the style of gameplay that you like to play as. Now, they did eventually have a couple of sequels, and in my opinion, the original is still the best. They made too many changes on the suits in the second game that stuck around for the third. To me, the original just is the best way, just running around an island and having targets to shoot at. I much prefer fighting other humans versus having to fight the aliens that are a lot more present in the sequels. Thanks for tuning in and watching this video. If you like what you saw, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to get more content. Also, consider donating to my Patreon so I can continue making awesome videos like this on a regular basis. Leave a comment below telling me what your top 10 PC games are. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.